back with another episode, inshallah, with another guest joining us from across the pond. And he is, someone that, again, I've wanted on for quite some time now, mashallah. We finally managed to get it done. It's just a bit crazy, alhamdulillah, with, everything going on right now. He is an instructor over at Qalam Institute. He is also the director of Roots. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome Sheikh AbdelRahman Murphy to the podcast today. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sheikh Shabir, how are you doing?
Good, alhamdulillah. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah. I'm just trying to manage. We actually today have a little bit of British weather, so I think
really?
it was the blessing of Allah Ta'ala's qadr for us that we were going to be together. Yeah, it's like 35, 40 degrees right now and raining, so it's very cold.
Wow.
35, 40 is cold. I don't know what that is centigrade.
Okay.
But I'm guessing maybe 9
day for us here in the UK.
I'm remembering my time in Birmingham and other places in London and Exeter and Wales and everything. It looks very outside. So alhamdulillah. But it's good to see you. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, very, very well. We of course there's a huge time difference between us. So we've prayed Maghrib, it's into the night time for us, and I can see it's daylight hours for you guys still.
It's 10 a.m., 10:50 a.m. right now, so we're
nice.
Just getting ready. My kids are just getting ready to conquer the world. So.
Mashallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. No, thank you for joining us. And I guess today one thing that we were going to speak about is kind of a broad topic. I guess when we say social media, there's so many elements and aspects of that we can discuss. What I spoke to you about beforehand was actually touching on the etiquettes of social media, or if you want to call it the fiqh of social media, whatever you want to call it, right? It's something which I don't think is maybe spoken about enough. The reality is that everybody's using social media right now. This podcast wouldn't be possible without social media, right? So there's definitely a lot of good there. But to speak about the etiquettes, the adab behind it, which some may find that surprising, really, we have to talk about etiquettes of social media. I thought it was just as simple as I have a phone, I open up my app, and I just browse, and that's that, right? But I think, covering the range of whether you're just quote unquote the consumer, the average consumer, you just open up apps, you don't even interact with anyone, you just scroll and consume content, or if you're someone that actually actively is interacting, or if you're someone that even is putting out content yourself, right? I think the adab aspect does apply to pretty much everyone, right? And I guess that's what we want to go into today. So I guess I want to start off just by asking, I'm sure you've been using social media for a while, right? When we're talking about social media, we're talking everything, Twitter, Instagram, and all that. How long do you think you've been using it for?
Oh man,
good part of a decade, maybe.
Oh, or less. I'm 32 years old.
Right.
I'm gonna be turning 33, this year, and so I remember when Facebook used to be only for university students.
Oh, okay, so you're on it.
Yeah, I'm from the generation where I was graduating my high school or secondary school in the UK, and I was going through and I was getting into university. And when you apply and you get accepted, one of the first things they give you is actually your email address, and that's what you needed to get your Facebook account. So I think more so than being excited to get into university, I was excited to get my Facebook account.
Okay.
I was like, wow, I finally made it to Facebook. And all the elders around me were like, you got into university. I was like, yeah, but I got Facebook. That's more important. It was very lucrative. It was a huge social status symbol. And who knew that that's going to be literally what it would become? I mean, it would become a status symbol in society. What kind of, whether it's the amount of followers you have or the blue check or all this kind of stuff. Ajib, man. So yeah, it's been a while. It's been over a decade.
Wow. And surely that's interesting, because surely in the last decade you would have seen some crazy changes in just the world as a whole, and the approach to social media. And of course, I mean, the stats don't lie either. The number of users, the increase, the billions, literally billions of people that are using social media on a daily basis, and the amount of tweets and snaps and posts that are sent out, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But what are your like? I know it's a difficult one to reflect on over the last decade or so, but what kind of changes have you seen in the last 10 years, just generally speaking?
I've seen a lot, man. I don't come at any sort of entity or anything with a very, binary answer. It's
Right.
one thing that I've learned. I'm not a scholar. I'm not a sheikh or a scholar. I'm just a student. And one of the things that I've learned from my teachers, and especially Sheikh Abdel Nasser, and
Mm.
he's my primary teacher. As I've gotten older, is that when I was a little bit younger, in my 20s, I was a lot more decisive about how I felt about things. I was very decisive, right? So I made qat'i what was dhanni, right? So I was very clear and definitive about what, should have been maybe a little bit more open-ended. And so if you asked me this question when I was 24, 25, I would have either said that social media is the devil or social media is the greatest dawah tool known to humankind.
Right.
And now that I'm a little bit older and I've learned how to be quiet, which is important when you reflect, you have to be quiet. You can't keep talking. I think I've started now to uncover and explore this idea of really trying to understand that everything truly is a utility. And more so than the utility itself, the heart and the soul and the nafs of the person that is engaging with that utility, that nafs has to be purified. Money is a utility. It is something that can feed the mouths of a family, or it can feed the sickness and addiction of a person who is addicted to drugs or alcohol. So that money itself inherently is not evil, but we see the power of the good and the power of evil that it can provide.
Yeah.
So over the last decade, when I've looked at social media, I mean, so much benefit has been brought about. So much good has happened. So many people, I don't think, you and I would not have been able to meet, the institute that I work with, Qalam Institute, being able to reach out to so many people, Roots, the community space that we have in Dallas. Social media is our primary means. I mean, I don't need to go on and on. There's so many examples.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes, and this is maybe me as a father, we look at the things that are really good and we sort of forget the things that are dangerous, or vice versa. And so for me, as someone coming from my 20s, thinking about the tool of good that social media could become, I didn't really think as much critically about how much danger it could pose. And maybe also because I was not at risk to those certain dangers. I had other dangers, of course, like wasting time and this and that. But the amount of attachment that I've seen to like social media accounts, the idea that this is something that can consume the better part of somebody's day, right?
Yeah.
And, through COVID in 2020 and now leading into 2021, whether it's being locked down or whether it's just working from home for general safety reasons, I think social media numbers, it's going to be interesting to see how much time people have thrown into Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, all these different, platforms now that are coming up. Now there's Clubhouse, all these different things that are sort of emerging. And I think what I've seen, right, as a summary, I know I've been talking for a long time, is I've just seen a more disconnected people. And by the way, I don't mean this only negatively. Like when I don't mean that, oh, people are so engaged in vanity and this and this and this, that they're disconnected. There's also a lot of good opportunity on social media, but it's still disconnecting people. Right. I'll give you an example, right? I'll be updating my Instagram, posting about an event that's going to happen here. We're teaching the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, benefit, good, khair. Everyone learning seerah, awesome, right? Meanwhile, my son, my soon going to be 4-year-old son, Musa, is next to me and he's looking at me and he wants me to look at the blocks that he just put together. He built a spaceship. And as I'm on my phone, I think I'm doing good, which I am. But then I look at I'm ignoring and neglecting the attention that my son is needing. And in that moment, even though I'm doing good, I'm actually distracted from my ultimate good, my ultimate purpose, right? So I think that what I've noticed is a lot more disconnection. I've even noticed within myself that I prefer to order food if I'm ordering takeout once in a while. I prefer to order it not over the phone and not in person. I prefer to order it using an app.
Yeah.
So I think, the generations to come might not find that same warmth and that same, the pain of heartbreak and the warmth of love and compassion and the nutrients of mercy and the difficulty of tension and being able to mash it out and hash it out with your friend that you got into a fight with. All of this stuff is going to be manipulated by the presence of this other realm known as social media, right? The passive aggressive subtweets, right? Instead of being able to call someone and say like, hey,
Yeah.
can we meet for coffee? Like, I need to talk to you about something that really bothered me the other day. Now it's like subtweeting, like, man, subhanAllah, if only some people knew how rude they were, may Allah guide us all. Like that's, and that's, to me, that's the biggest thing that I've noticed is that humanity has been shackled. And I worry about that for even myself sometimes as a father and as a friend, as a son, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see.
Yeah, interesting thoughts. I think I'm with you on like just turning to like an app and just like avoiding at all costs speaking to like a human being. Like, oh, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered having a conversation and keeping it like even like grocery stores, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're checking out and you'd rather go to self checkout, just even though it's easier for literally someone to do it for you. You're like, oh, I have to speak to a human being. And I'd rather just go and do my thing and not speak. Like we're getting to that stage. If anything, we're there right now.
It's so bad. It's so bad. And then people go to like Turkey or like Istanbul or something, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, the culture there, the warmth, the people are so connected. You get to buy fresh orange juice, and you get to meet the person who, he made your food." I'm like, this can happen in America too. Like, you're not as adept to using social media in a different country. You don't have their apps and things like that. So it's like, people go and they think that they've been transported to this like whimsical world, like they're in Narnia or something now, and they're like, it's incredible. Like, I'm able to talk to I'm able to speak to people. It's like, you can do that here. So it is very ajib. And I wonder how much, I did my master's in mental health counseling. I didn't get my license to practice because that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn the theory and the different dispositions and mental health and things like that. As an imam, it helps, right? I'm not going to take clients, but it helps me understand people better when they come. So, and subhanAllah, I remember this was like 8-9 years ago. And I remember my professor, one of my master's professors, he said that there might come a time when people actually choose to have their therapy, their appointments over FaceTime as opposed to in person. Right. And he said that the in-person connection that we are so dependent upon, technology might fundamentally shift what it means to connect to somebody. And so, and you see now, actually, there's marketing for teletherapy, telecounseling, and a lot of people. It's good. It's good. There are some people who genuinely have, maybe some anxiety about being in person, and they're a little bit more comfortable. But I think as a societal shift, it's very interesting. So we'll see. May Allah Ta'ala protect us. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you kind of alluded to was like your personal approach to social media, right? So I'm sure, we've spoken about social media generally, how it's changed, but like you even just personally, over the last 10 years, your usage of it, the way that you've interacted, the way that you've approached it, just generally speaking, like you kind of alluded to it. But like, how has that also changed? Because I mean, for me personally, I can 100% say over the years it has changed. I think I try, I hope in a positive way, like just cutting down, and maybe, if someone were to comment something once upon a time, like a few years ago, I would be that guy that would respond and be like, I need to prove them wrong. And now maybe I'm at a stage where I'm just like, I just don't have the time or the energy or just whatever to give to this individual. Like, I'd rather just ignore now, just carry on and just block. I think you actually, I think you tweeted this actually like a few months ago or something. Something along the lines of like, it's so much easier for you to just like block and move on or something like that instead of
Yeah.
reacting and responding. So yeah, what's like your just personally like, has anything
Um,
changed?
I think also some of it has to do with my son and my daughter, Musa and Iman, coming into my life in the last 4 or 5 years. Social media, one of the things that it does, subhanAllah, is that it has a way of sort of making you feel like everyone's opinions matter and everybody's
Yeah.
important, and I have to try to please everybody. And you could get 100 people agreeing with you, but if 1 or 2 people disagree with you, then you feel it's unsettling. And I think what social media did is it became like the great revealer, the great uncoverer, right?
Mm.
It allowed people to uncover how they felt. Whereas maybe in person, if I didn't agree with something that I heard, I wouldn't say it to that person. I would just kind of let it go, right? And what that would do is it would probably preserve our relationship. It would probably quell my arrogance. Like, why do I feel the need to share my opinion? Is it really critical for me to tell somebody that I think that, this is this or that is that? Or so one thing that I've tried to tell people, especially, the community members here that are in college and young professionals, is that, number one, you don't need to really care what everyone thinks. Like, primarily, you have to worry about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks. You should worry about, obviously, whether or not you fit in the path of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So in that way, what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would think about you, your parents, your family, your very close friends, your teachers, the ulama that you're surrounded by, the pious people in your life. You want to worry about what these people think about you. If you make that circle too big, the circle of what you think about, the circle of caring about what people think about, it becomes unsustainable. It becomes actually a huge point of stress. And I think without realizing it, opening up your life on a social media platform, Twitter, Instagram, whatnot, and reading the comments and seeing, it is, without realizing it, enlarging that circle of, what do I care about what these people think about me?
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful. And so I've been on this like mini little, crusade of sorts and it's not about being arrogant or a jerk, because, Imam al-Ghazali very famously says that, like, vanity and arrogance are kind of like two diseases of the same, two sides of the same coin. Vanity is like when you're impressed by yourself, right? Ujub, right? When we say ajib, we're like, wow, that's wondrous. That's amazing. So ujub literally is to be like, wow, I am wondrous, And then he says arrogance, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ says, ghamtun nas, right? To look down upon people. Arrogance requires other people. So this isn't arrogance in the sense that, I don't care what people think about me. That's also not correct, because the Prophet ﷺ taught us that it is actually beneficial and productive spiritually to make sure that you also take shura from people and make sure that you're not like completely just, brushing people aside with their constructive criticism, their feedback. But like everybody should not have that pathway into your life. And so I've been telling people, just block people, man. Just block people. More people.
Yeah.
If people feel the courage to come at you about something, if Shabir posts like a picture of himself, mashallah, Sheikh Shabir, if he posts a picture without a kufi or a topi on, right? And then like one of the pious people, the pious zealots online, you don't really find really, really pious people online, to be honest with you. But one of the pious zealots, they're like, oh wow, look at the mashayikh of England not wearing their head. Oh, like, no, where's his fist length beard? Oh,
Sheikh, how do you know the kind of comments I get? Wow.
the second I actually just went to your account and I looked at all your posts. Then people like, look at him wearing this Western clothing. Are these the ulama that we? And then they'll give you some like obscure quote from Ibn al-Qayyim where they're like, and he's not even talking about this, he's talking about something else, but they're like, oh, the people, and it's like, dude, I don't even know you, bro. Like, first of all, you would never say this to me in real life, right? You would never ever say, because it's very difficult, and it's one of the mercies of the believers. The Prophet ﷺ, like when we inherited from him this deen, okay, we also inherited from him the rahmah that he brought. And so a believer should feel mercy. Like a believer should feel mercy for other people, right? That's Allah Ta'ala describes the Prophet ﷺ as what? Azizun alayhi ma anittum. Then what?
Harisun alaykum bil mu'minin.
Harisun alaykum bil mu'minina ra'ufun rahimun. He describes the Prophet ﷺ as he cares so much about you. It bothers him when you are in pain. It actually bothers him when he sees what hits you, what affects you. And then he says specifically describing him that بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ, that with the believers, he is particularly merciful and compassionate and kind. So we as Muslims, if you inherited Islam from the Prophet ﷺ, you also have to make sure that you try your best to be that way.
Yeah.
And social media has made it very difficult. I'm sorry, it has made it very easy to like just move beyond that and to forget about that mercy. You know, and so people are saying things to each other online that they would never say. And you wonder, like, maybe this is the wisdom behind like in-person interactions. And so people would just come at you. And my advice to you at that point, Sheikh, would be like, man, this person doesn't care about you. They don't do dua for you. They don't think about you. You know, when they're cooking dinner, they don't think about putting some aside and delivering it to your house. That person doesn't have a right to my life. You know, that person does not have a right to my life. I'm sorry. And so I have become very friendly with the block button. Not that I get attacked often, alhamdulillah, because all I post are pictures of my coffee and my kids, and that's it.
Yeah.
But occasionally, when I do try to share maybe something that I learned in one of my classes, and then people try to come at you, this and that, I'm like, look, man, I love you for the sake of Allah. I hope to see you in Jannah, but I don't want to see you here. And I just block them. Like that's my approach with people, man.
Yeah.
The anxiety that it brings is not worth it.
Yeah, I like that. I hope to see you in Jannah, but not here. That's going to be like my 2021 motto right now.
I want every believer to go to Jannah. I just don't want to see every one of them here. Like, if we get along because of whatever reason, but inshallah, I'll see you in Jannah, and there, you know, as Allah Ta'ala says, there will be no vain talk, so we're not going to be enemies.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a really good point. What's like? I know it's a bit random, but like, what's some of your biggest like pet peeves of social media? Let's talk a bit about that, because I mean we're already kind of like speaking about one anyway, which is just like responding to like everything and going straight off, like attacking people. So yeah, do you have any specifically? I'll share some of mine as well. By the way, when I say social media, I'm even talking about like WhatsApp, people calling you, messaging you, even away from like Twitter and stuff. So like, is there anything like communication wise that bugs you?
Well, can you share the one that you always talk about, which is like giving people time to respond and stuff?
Oh yeah. So I was actually going to mention this. This is like this is the one I genuinely it bugs me so much, and I always speak about it, which is when you contact someone, you're calling them, you're messaging them. Well, there's two actually. I'll share two. One is the response, which I think you're talking about, which is you call someone, they don't pick up, and you basically call them again straight after, and then you call them again straight after, and by the time you're finished with like your meeting or your class, whatever it is, right? Because clearly, I mean, or even if, like I always make this point, even if you weren't doing anything at that point, you have the right to not pick up a phone call, unless it's like an emergency or something like that. You have the right to not pick up a phone call because essentially it's your private time. It's like someone knocks on your door. That we know from the Sunnah, Prophet says like you don't have to, and in fact, the person that's come to your house is being told that you should knock 3 times and leave, even if you know someone's at home. Leave it because they are doing their thing. Just that's it, right? So what a lot of people would fail to understand is to apply that same understanding to phones and social media, which is like if you can't get through to someone and it's not like a major emergency, which in 95 whatever percent of cases is not, right? Then that's it. You just leave them. Call them once, okay, fine. Give it a few minutes maybe, and call them again. Like what? One thing I don't understand is why call like 3 times in a row. It's not really going to make any difference, right?
You know, where I'm from and the way I was raised, if you call somebody like that, it means I've gotten into a car accident. That's what it means. It means I'm my car flipped over and I'm trapped underneath. That's why I'm calling you 4 times in a row.
Okay.
Like it's a very urgent thing, or like my house is on fire, or like you know, so and so fainted or they're unconscious. Like if you call someone that many times in a row, you're talking about like life or death. Okay, so yes, that's number one. And you mentioned one time I started laughing because I'm like, man, there have been so many times where that's happened and I picked up and I'm like, yeah, assalamu alaikum. What's going on?
Yeah.
Like, so I just wanted to know, you know, is the meat being served tonight at Roots? Is it like, I'm like, what, like, is it like tayyib or is it just zabiha? Bro, you called me sick.
Oh my God.
So
Yeah, so that's definitely one, which is even with messaging, like, I get it, we're all busy, and at the same time, we should try and get back to people, whatever, that's fine. But
yeah,
to just like constantly be after someone, calling them, messaging them, again, like you said, if it's not an emergency, which in most cases it's not, you're just asking a question, to chase them up constantly, that's one thing. The second thing I was just going to say, my second biggest pet peeve is when you call someone or message them and you've somehow got their number or you've messaged them on social media, is to actually make yourself known, like who you are. Because I get a lot of calls, maybe that like I don't recognize the number. And my personal policy, I'll just be straight with you. I don't pick up calls. If I don't recognize the number, I don't pick up. And I expect that that person will leave a voicemail or a message to say, "Assalamu alaikum, sorry, I couldn't reach you. You might be busy right now, but it's me. It's Shabir, and from this place, yeah, please get in touch." But then I'll keep getting calls from the same number, no message, no. So what do I have to do? Like, I literally have to like save their number, go on WhatsApp, click on their profile picture,
and
hope
see who
that
they are.
hope that they have a picture. If they don't, then if they got a picture of like their cat, I'm screwed because I'm like, oh my God, I don't know who you are. So like, imagine you're putting someone through like so much difficulty just to find out who you are. Just make yourself known, drop a message, and say, look, we met at this event. Yeah, I'll get back to you straight away. Honestly, I will message you straight away. So those are my two personal ones. Yeah.
And subhanallah, man, when you read some of the books from the sciences of tazkiyah and some of the the great writings of people like Ibn al-Jawzi and Imam al-Ghazali and Imam al-Hasibi and others, and they write about when you reflect upon yourself and you discover things, right? So the crazy thing about diseases of the heart is that they're not always like super apparent to you, right? Sometimes they only become clear what they are when you sort of think about what you're feeling in a moment. So I'll give you an example. There's a sense of entitlement that people have, that someone has to respond to my message or someone has to. And this isn't just with people, imams like you or I. This is everybody. Like everybody messages somebody, and everybody feels like, like I deserve to be responded to within a certain amount of time. And to be quite frank with everybody, like there are only a few people in everybody's life who actually deserve that. Okay, like your mother, your father, your spouse, your kids, maybe your employer. Like there's only a few people in your life that can say that, hey, when I message you, you have to respond to me within like an hour. I have to know like 30 minutes or an hour. That expectation to have of every person in your life is definitely, to me, when I think about it, from the symptoms of arrogance and vanity. Like definitely, self-importance, this idea that I deserve. It's interesting. People get so frustrated when people don't respond. And it makes you wonder, subhanAllah, why are you getting so frustrated? And why isn't the first thing that you're thinking, I hope they're okay? We taught this actually in one of our classes at Roots. I said, instead of asking somebody, why aren't you picking up? Or why aren't you responding? Your first question should be, is everything okay? Because what if that person is not okay? There was actually a story that someone told me after I mentioned this lesson, and he said that exact same thing happened to him. He said that my friend, we had plans. He was running late, and then he ended up not showing up. He didn't respond. And so I just went off on him. He's like, oh, this is so disrespectful. My time this, my time that. Turns out that the guy's uncle or grandfather either was in the hospital, got a phone call and just left. And in the hospitals here in America, there's notoriously bad reception. I'm not sure why. Yeah. Exactly. I don't know exactly why, but notoriously bad reception. So his phone wasn't even getting messages.
Right.
Meanwhile, his uncle or grandfather, I forget which one, is actually like terminal, is in the process of passing away.
Mm.
And this guy is like upset that he can't go get like a chicken sandwich and fries. You know, it's like, dude, ask, are you okay? And you know what? Inshallah, 999 times out of 1,000, there won't be anything wrong. It'll be some miscommunication. But dude, do you really want to be that person that exposes your self-importance to that degree where you expect this person to, you know, and this is actually one of the signs of the hypocrites. You know, the sign of the hypocrites is that when they speak, they become very abrasive, right? When they argue, when they engage with a little bit, they become very harsh, right? The Prophet ﷺ told us that. So it's important for us to extend that adab as well. What would you say to this person in person, right? And when you train yourself to start asking people, is everything okay? As opposed to, where are you? Why aren't you responding? Then all of a sudden your mind starts having husnul dhan of this person. You start having the benefit of the doubt, and your mind starts manufacturing, your heart and your mind start coming up with potential scenarios without you even having to try. If you say, is everything okay? Then you start saying, I wonder if they got a flat tire. I wonder if they got sick. I wonder if their phone battery died. I wonder if this. Then that anger and that arrogance you're feeling in your heart, it starts going away. It's very interesting how adab can be a really important stepping stone to achieving a purified heart in this. Yeah, those are two very, very good ones that you mentioned.
That's really, no, I really appreciate that point you just made there, which is, I think a lot of us are lacking. It's just that basic human, you know, even if we're not talking about it from religious perspective, it is literally just a basic human, you know, other form of interaction and empathy, just to show someone like, you know what, I do care about you. But you know, it's the language, right? The language says a lot. Your tone and language says a lot. So if you literally just, like you said, you know, first thing you go at someone, why didn't you pick up? It shows that you probably don't really care much about that person. And like you said, you just care about yourself, and you know, you didn't get something out of it. You didn't achieve something at that particular time. So I think that's really, really important point. So coming back to
my pet peeves,
your pet peeves,
I mean, you got two of them pretty much spot on. I think people's expectation, you know, calling back and forth, back to back is another one. Just in general, social media, I think, you know, one of the things that I'm concerned about is this. I met someone recently and I asked what they did for work, and they said that they were an influencer, and I genuinely didn't know what that meant in the beginning.
Oh, is it? Okay.
In the beginning, I was like, and then it took me like 3 or 4 seconds. I was like, oh, you mean like online you're an influencer? And they were like, yeah. So I said, okay. And, you know, I'm not trying to offend any. I don't want to be hurtful to anybody. I just don't. I worry about the soul of everybody, myself included, when the primary function of our existence is exposure to the world. Like, I worry about that. You know, I worry about couples not being able to share actual intimate moments. I worry about me not being able to feel happiness without having to share it. I worry about that. I worry that that becomes the norm. There was actually a moment the other day, because you know, riya and ostentation and showing off is something that I don't think we talk enough about.
Yeah,
I don't think we discuss this. And you know, this disease that the Prophet ﷺ told us about, where he said it's more difficult to detect than even an ant or a dark insect on a dark rock in the middle of the night. It's so difficult to detect this disease of riya, of showing off. What is riya? Riya is doing something that otherwise would be a good deed for the sake of Allah, and portraying it to be like something virtuous, when in fact what you're actually seeking is like the praise or the reputation of people. And this is something that I really worry about, Sheikh Shabir, myself all the time. Why am I sharing this? Why am I posting this? Why am I doing this? If I am so concerned that people can see and can appreciate and praise and elevate me, then I worry about what kind of effect that has on my heart and my life. So one of my bigger pet peeves is like when I meet someone in person and they're completely different online, based on their seeking to try to become something, as opposed to trying to be genuine. Look, there's nothing wrong if people follow you and like you. I don't even consider myself to be quote unquote well known. I mean, there's Sheikh Omar Suleiman. He lives down the street from me, man. This guy's got like 20 million billion followers, mashallah. But you know what I love about Sheikh Omar? Honestly, he's exactly the same person online that he is in person. He's exactly the same. Okay, the way he talks, the way he is, you don't hear like a different voice. You know, like you don't hear speaker voice, and then when you hang out with him, you hear his voice. No, he's the same person. Sheikh Abdel Nasser, Mufti Kamani, others. You know, some of the teachers that I know, the same person that they are. And I think that genuineness is something that I'm worried about, that people feel like when they're online, they have to show a different reality. And this isn't just for quote unquote famous people or influencers. This is for everybody. Everyone is on this mission to portray their life as being, you know, shiny and perfect. And in fact, it's not. And it affects the mental health of everybody else around us. You know, so if every single night we are showing like gourmet meals and our children dressed up and this and this and this, even the pictures that we took last year on vacation, we're posting them today. So ajib, strange, right? Like, oh, last year I was in the Maldives and I'm posting it right now. And I'm like, why are you traveling? It's COVID. And then I realized like, oh, this is like what they call a latergram. Like they post it later.
Yeah.
And there's people, you know, who look at this stuff and it really affects them. So I would love if people online would seek to be more authentic, more genuine, and share the ups and the downs, you know, share the highs and the lows. It's okay if you made a great meal. You know, I have a friend, my friend Saqib Shafi. I don't know if you've heard of him, the Muslim Eater. That's what
No, I haven't actually.
So he's a big deal in America.
Okay.
He loves cooking. He's really good at cooking, mashallah. His burgers are unreal. His, you know, he makes pizza like from scratch. Like he ferments his dough for like 3-4 days in the fridge.
Oh, wow.
He's serious. He's serious, right? Like he's a serious guy. But every once in a while, you know, maybe like every 2 or 3 days that he posts something, he'll post like I don't know what's something that you guys have that's like a 1-minute meal.
Okay.
Like he's just like, you know, ramen noodles, like cup noodles.
Yeah.
He'll post that and he'll be like, yep, tonight. So people don't always think that this guy is like Gordon Ramsay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's easy for a person to look at that and be like, man, my life sucks. My husband sucks. My wife sucks. My kids suck. Like all this stuff, I hate it. Why? Because everyone that I follow, their home is beautiful. Their life looks beautiful, this and this and this. When in reality, you don't realize that that moment was curated. And your nafs now is like tweaked, right? And Allah tells us this, أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرُ حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرَ. You're going to constantly be seeking more until you go to the grave. So when it comes to social media, like I would hope, inshallah, my biggest pet peeve is probably just the idea that like I have to be perfect. I have to be someone. I have to be this or that. So sorry, I know I kind of went on a rant there.
No. This some really important points there. I think yeah, it's all about highlights, isn't it? It's literally called highlights on Instagram. It's literally called highlights. Literally, right? It's all about the ups and the positives and all of that. You mentioned something like interesting about not kind of being yourself, right, on social media. Don't you feel like that is nowadays a real form of like escapism for a lot of like youth, especially, right? Like they're not getting whatever it is satisfaction in their homes or amongst their circles, right? So they have to turn almost to social media to like feel good about themselves. And I guess this is where the instant like gratification, all of that comes into it, right? Which really helps, the likes, the comments, the attention, which is something I remember I spoke about it recently, which is like when it comes to, like you mentioned the word influencer, right? Like influencers essentially are, they thrive, even if it's not in a bad way, but they literally, their careers are based on attention.
Yes.
Right. As soon as the attention disappears, like that's it. The deals that they have, the promo stuff that they do, it's gone, because it's all about the metrics. It's all about the figures, right? Because essentially that's bringing in money. If the attention goes, that's it. So what we were discussing was how, in order to continuously garner that attention and to keep it and to keep yourself relevant, you have to basically do things even if it goes against your own principles and values, even if it goes against all of that, even if it's something which is really wacky and crazy, and you're only doing it because it's really like, it's spicy, it's hot, it's what everyone's talking about, you have to jump on the bandwagon and do it to keep yourself relevant.
Yeah.
And a lot of the influencers out there today, right, that's essentially what they're doing. Like, it's all about the clickbait titles and all of that, because you have to keep yourself relevant. You have to keep things going. But that's like, we're talking about the world of influencers is different. Like you said, you don't have to be famous or an influencer. The average kid nowadays is doing this just to keep the attention flowing and to keep that. So what are your thoughts on just that whole world in and of itself, right? With especially youth today.
I think, look, between the two spectrums of social media with young people, there's the desire to appear perfect, and then there's the completely uninhibited exposure of my desires, myself, everything. And and it's interesting, right? Because like when I meet people and talk to people, and we talk about the dangers of exposing one's shortcomings, one's sins, and we speak about that's one side of it. We also speak about trying to compromise or trying to be so perfect that you compromise who you are. Mashallah, Sister Halima, the former supermodel, she's a hijabi supermodel, or was, or and she had like one of the most amazing sequences online that she shared of like her realization, man. She basically cataloged like what a heart coming closer to Allah felt like for her. Like she categorized her. It reminded me of Imam al-Ghazali's like journey, like her journey. She talked about how she was really proud of her hijab as a young woman, as a young girl, and she wore it with pride, and she wore it with courage, and she wore it with strength. And then she got this opportunity to model for these like premier magazines, agencies, and fashion designers, and she was at different places. She met different people, and then she's saying this. I'm not saying this. She said that she found herself like slipping and like compromising her values and principles for the sake of this greater good, right? And she said her intent started as like, well, representation of Muslimas and of people who wear hijab is good. It's gonna put Muslims on the front pages, screens of people in the world, and they're gonna engage with them and see them, et cetera, et cetera. And then she's like, and I noticed that like as I was chasing this quote unquote greater good, like I was choosing to wear things that I would normally never wear, and put myself in positions that I would never find myself in if I were sticking to my morals. And then she said that her mother, may Allah bless our mothers, man. She said that her mother kept reminding her that, don't forget who you are. Don't forget what you are. Don't forget your relationship with Allah. Don't forget your relationship with your, and like, she said, like after enough chipping away, my mother finally broke through. And like, I realized that I had become so different than who I was. And subhanAllah, man, like I love that story. May Allah bless her, man, for sharing that. It's very hard to open up and be vulnerable in that way, because again, even with religiosity, everyone wants to appear perfect, right? No one's willing to share sometimes the moment that they slip. But I think she helped a lot of people with that moment. So I think, between the need to appear perfect and the need to show everything, I think there's a middle ground. Appear genuine enough and authentic enough to not be somebody who is putting up a facade, but also you don't really need to expose every single part of your life, right? And it's not hypocrisy to hide your sins. In fact, it's actually part of the personality of a believer not to want to expose their sins. You know what I mean? You don't have to go and say, well, this is who I am, and I'm posting this because I have to be my true self. Right? Sheikh Abdel Nasser one time, a long time ago, when we were talking about something and I mentioned this statement, like, I have to be true to me. He goes, no, you don't. He goes, what do you mean? Like, you don't have to show everyone who you are, because that was like the whole idea, right? Like, I have to be to show the world who my true self is. He goes, no, you don't. Of course you don't. Of course you don't have to show. You don't walk around naked, right? So he's like, why would you, you wear clothes. So he's like, why would you want to show everyone your problems, right? These are things that you can work on. So I think achieving وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا, that we achieve this balance in our life, that we know we're not perfect, but at the same time, there's no need to number one, compromise who we are by, you know, posting things that we know are problematic, even sharing and retweeting, man. Sheikh, this is one of my bigger pet peeves, is like you retweet or share something and you're not thinking about that person's profile or their image is basically pornographic. And you're posting that, and like the comment or the item itself may not be problematic. It might be a joke or something, but you don't realize, like, you know, you're sharing that, you're putting that on someone's feed or their timeline, or even worse, like, you know, their content actually is bad and you still favored it or shared it. Like, you know, have some shyness with Allah. Some, you know, hide it, hide that. There's actually a lot of power in that. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that every sin that a person commits is eligible to be forgiven, except for the one that the person exposes. Because exposure of a sin is lack of shyness with a sin. And if somebody's not shy, why would they be forgiven? You know, if I broke a window of someone's home, if I was tossing a ball around and I shattered someone's front window, and I came to their window and they looked at me and they said, "You did this?" And I said, "Yeah, I did it. What are you going to do about it?" Right? It is who I am. Do you think that person's going to forgive me? No. But if I came to them and I was crying and I had my eyes and I was shaking and I couldn't look at them in the face, and they said, "Did you break my window?" And I said, "Yes, I'm so sorry. I'll do whatever I can to replace it. I didn't mean it. I was just," then that person, naturally, their heart is going to open up to forgiving me because they see my remorse. And Allah Ta'ala's example is much greater. If you come to Allah with arrogance, He can forgive whoever He wants, but He won't, because your arrogance is toxic. But if you come to Allah with humility, you know, not sharing your weaknesses and vulnerabilities, then inshallah, Allah Ta'ala will forgive. So I would say to young people, like, you don't have to pretend to be perfect, but you also don't have to air out your dirty laundry, man. Just keep it authentic and genuine, but also keep it spiritually safe. Keep it productive. You know, you don't want to encourage other people to do the things that maybe they see, you know, you and I, that we struggle with. If I struggle with something and I'm with, you know, I'm at a hookah shisha lounge with a bunch of women and I'm there and you know, that might be my problem that I'm dealing with. But if I do something and now my friends see that and they're like, okay, you know, and now I'm going to be the one that's going to take them on that path, and I don't want to do that.
Absolutely. I was just smiling for a second because I just remembered like this tweet that I saw recently from this sister, may Allah bless her. She, I don't think she's married, right? But she tweeted something like, "Ah, can you imagine sunrise walks after Fajr with your spouse?" And it got like thousands of like retweets, and people are like loving this, you know, this idea of, you know, this basically this romanticized idea of like marriage and stuff. Like, oh, imagine you walk after Fajr with your spouse, sunrise, and a few people were like subtweeting it saying, "Yeah, I'm married and I can't remember the last time this ever happened." Like, literally, like it's feeding into it, right? Though, like, you know, social media, this whole thing, like, yeah, it's so perfect out there, and this is what's gonna happen.
She gets married, poor girl, and the first day that Fajr comes in, she's there anxiously by the front door, and her husband just goes back to sleep. You know? Yeah. I mean, and then also there's the weird, like, you know, hyper crazy, like, oh, you know, there's men who see women on social media, and then these women are doctored, Photoshop, airbrushed, plastic surgery, whatever. And then these guys complain that they can't find someone that's suitable and attractive enough for them to marry. And I'm like, yeah, because you're addicted to, you know, this stuff, you know, whether it's pornographic or whether it's the heart that falls in love with something that is fake will never love what is real.
Yeah. So
right.
True.
In every realm. If a person, you know, Imam Siraj Wahaj, you guys know Imam Siraj Wahaj?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He's like one of the imams of America, man. That man, subhanAllah, you know, man, he's so amazing. You should do an entire podcast about him. He's so amazing, and he changed an entire block of New York City that was infested with drugs. Changed it by building a masjid there, man.
Wow.
And he just completely conquered all of that garbage that was there by bringing Islam to that area. It was like, you know, and Imam Siraj al-Hajj, he told the story one time, and he said that, you know, one time he went hiking and he went to this, like, I don't know where it was. It was like some very scenic area, and it was pure, beautiful mountain spring water. And he said that he took a sip of that water, and he said that it was so pure, it was so almost like potent in its purity that it actually caused him to feel nauseous. And he actually even started to like gag. And he gave that example, and he was talking about how if the soul becomes accustomed, if the heart becomes accustomed to things that are impure, then pure things are actually detestable.
Wow.
So if I fall in love, like if I become an alcoholic, eventually there's certain levels of alcoholism where like even water is no longer, it makes me gag, it makes me vomit. I need alcohol, right? And so it's the same thing with social media. If a person becomes so attached to fake beauty or fakeness in general, then, you know, the most sincere, real, and beautiful moments will never be enough for that person. It could be, you know, and this could be whether it's, we're talking about brothers in the physical realm and all that kind of stuff. It could also be just like people, man. Like your husband's not good enough for you. Your kids are not good enough for you. Why? Because you saw online that so-and-so's husband or so-and-so's kids or so-and-so's, their friends did this.
Yeah.
And it starts to warp your reality. So those sunrise, post-Fajr sunrise walks, you know, like it looks like you might be by yourself. No, I mean, you might be able to find somebody, but again, making that your standard is very, very.
Yeah. It's just like your expectations go from like here to like God knows where, like, you know, blows through the roof just because of some tweet that you saw or some picture that you saw. And yeah, it's crazy. There's, I mean, on the topic of social media, there's so much we could talk about in terms of like just etiquettes, even in terms of just like fatwas, you know, relaying information. Like I've come across some crazy stuff, you know, especially with COVID. We've had that whole thing with vaccines and so on, right? We've had people peddling like loads of different conspiracy theories, and even when it comes to like Islam, even like fatwa is just like very easily someone who's not, you know, qualified, whatever that means, but to like nothing, like no credentials, teachers, and literally just like throwing stuff out there, giving their this is my thing. And you know what, like what's crazy is sometimes I don't even blame them. Like I know it sounds weird, I don't blame them because I feel like their audience, their followers have given them so much authority and like just put them up on such a high pedestal. Like it's almost as if they're just waiting for them to now, because they're a Muslim and they happen to have like a beard or hijab, they're just like, they now become the spokesperson of Islam. And even in like the Instagram, you know, Q&A sessions, it'll always be like, oh, so is it halal, is it haram to do this or that? And they're like, yeah, you know, and that's how it literally starts, honestly. I've actually seen people with my own eyes, people that I know personally, that went from, I'm sorry to say, like nothing, like studying nothing, to they're literally taking groups for Umrah. Yeah, wallah, like I'm being real with you, Sheikh. Like they literally started taking people for Umrah packages and leading groups. And I promise you, like I know them personally. They haven't studied at all.
Really scary, man. I only
It's
laugh
really
because,
scary.
otherwise I would cry. I laugh
Yeah,
because
no.
that's really scary, man. You know, look, I'll be the first to tell you, man, I'm not a scholar. I'm a student of knowledge, and I'm barely a student of knowledge, you know, like I just really enjoy reading with Sheikh Abdel Nasser. That's basically it. That's
Yeah.
that's my life. If someone asks like, what do you do? I'm like, I read books with Sheikh Abdel Nasser, and I just enjoy learning with him, you know. And I really avoid, you know, Q&As or anything like that, man, because man, assuming the position of being an answer of a question is a big deal, man. I'll never forget the story I read of Imam Malik where someone came to him from like Morocco or Algeria, like Maghrib area, and he, you know, asked him questions, and he said, I don't know. A very famous story. People have heard this, but he you know, he said, I don't know, to like 95 of the questions. Like the man asked 100 of them, and like almost all of them, he said, I don't know. So the man got angry and told him, like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, I came all this way. And he said, you know, when I go back to my people, what do you think they're going to think about you? You know, all we know is that Imam Malik is this amazing person. He's a legend. He is and was like, you know, let me put this in context. He was, and he probably could have answered those questions. He just chose not to, right? Because of his concern that maybe I don't know fully, right? It's not like he was withholding because he was trying to be mean. No, he was cautious, right? So this man said to him, what are the people going to say about you? And he said, tell them, قُلْهُمْ مَالِكْ لَا يَدْرِي. Say to them, Malik doesn't know. Because he said, what am I going to tell them? What am I going to tell these people? He says, say to them, Malik doesn't know. And the man said, هَذَا شَيْءٌ فِي الْعِلْمِ خَفِيفٌ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. Like it's so light in knowledge. I'm asking you things that are so light in knowledge. And Imam Malik started crying. And he said, Inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila. He said, did you not hear the statement of Allah Ta'ala when he said that we have sent down upon you a very heavy speech? He says, Ma shay' fi ilm khafif. Like there's nothing in knowledge that's light. And man, I read that story like a long time ago when I was like in college. And I got goosebumps right now. Like it still shakes me, man, because and you know the Sheikh, like as you continue studying and learning, I mean, alhamdulillah, you graduated, but now, you know, you never stop reading. You never stop. I always see you post pictures of your books and the book haul. Man, I go to Turkey usually 3-4 times a year, and I go to Maktabat Irshad there, and I usually bring home an entire suitcase of books, but I wasn't able to go this year. And I know you get very excited and you keep learning, and tell me if this is not true, that the more you learn, the less you want to answer. Absolutely. 100%, right? The more you learn, you're like, oh God, man. So someone asks you a question when you were 21, you're like, yeah, I'll answer this. Now you're like, no, I'm not answering this. And like literally, you know the answer. You don't, like, there are some times where I know the answer. I've studied the mas'ala, like I know it, but I'm like, let me go look it up one more time, right? Let me go look at this book one more time because I just want to make sure. And that's not saying anything about me. It's saying about how bad, you know, maybe I was before. Alhamdulillah, I wasn't, you know, like I wasn't answering questions left and right, but that's why it's very dangerous. So look, man, when it comes to like information, Allah Ta'ala tells us in the Quran very clearly that we have to be people of integrity. You know, فَتَبَيَّنُوا أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ. That you have to verify أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ. Otherwise, you might hurt people in your ignorance. Your ignorance might be a reason that people are harmed. Right? That could be spiritual, physical, financial, health, right? If you're peddling like, you know, weird Islamic opinions, you know, we've all seen this, man. Like Twitter, Google, Instagram, these are not places for you to get your nutrition, man, your spiritual nutrition. They're not. You can get a snack once in a while, you know, like even mashallah, the Ilm Feed podcast. I think Sheikh Shabir would be the first person to tell you that this is enjoyable Islamic engagement. But if you really want to seek fiqh, if you really want to seek knowledge, then this is a nice doorway, but we have to keep going, right? I'm sure you would say, by all means, right? So I don't like people watching YouTube videos or like, and look, man, I'm on YouTube, like I know it, but dude, watching YouTube videos is not like seeking knowledge. It's a good step. It's a great step. You know, it's more than a lot of people are doing. And if it's more than you were doing yesterday, mashallah mumtaz, shabash, as they say, right? But you have to keep going. So it's important to also not get sucked into that world of like Instagram Q&As, this and that. I did one recently, and I think, you know, I talked to Sheikh Abdel Nasser, and he was saying like it's good to do them once in a while, but make an entire profile out of it, and to try to, especially if you're not qualified. If you're qualified, then may Allah bless you. Like I think, you know, the ummah needs answers. So I know that there's muftis on Instagram who are trying to help, and I know there's muftis on Twitter that are trying to help. May Allah bless you, man. It's tough. Like I don't envy you all, you know. And Q&As, that's fine. But I think, like you said, for maybe somebody that doesn't have training, for somebody that's not connected to scholarship, that's not, that their lineage is unknown, right? If I said something crazy, everyone knows who to go to, right? If I give a bad answer, everyone call Sheikh Abdel Nasser. What's up with your boy, man? What happened? Like, why are you saying this?
Yeah, yeah.
But these random people popping up out of nowhere with a beard, and they, this and that. It's dangerous, man. And I know that there was some stuff in the UK about some scams from
Yeah. We've had our fair share recently.
very visually pious people. Yeah, in America we have other issues. We don't have that though. That's we have not come across yet. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah,
I know,
we've
yeah,
had our talent.
the UK
Honestly.
and the US Muslim community, I know we kind of look at each other like the UK is like, man, the American Muslims are such sellouts. And the US and the UK Muslims are wild. Like they get scammed left and right by religious people. But anyways, nevertheless, I think that, it's a very, very good point to bring up. And I think inshallah, if you want to seek benefit for your religion, the internet is a doorway, but it's not the path itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What you see on the internet is not real. It's not real. It's just an illusion. You have to keep going into reality.
You know that, by the way, just on one final note, that story you mentioned about Imam Malik, like such an amazing story, right? I'm not saying this is the reason why. I always, one thing I always take away from that story is like an important point was that like there were literally people that came from Maghrib, right? They came from another part of the world, and he, as you know, like Imam Malik, he wasn't the kind of guy that would leave Medina very easily, right? Like he was there in Hijaz, right? So one thing I personally take away from that is like, again, I'm not saying this is why he didn't answer, but to communicate and to give answers to people from a completely different part of the world. Like even we're talking about, you're in the US, I'm in the UK, like we have our own struggles, like you just highlighted, right?
Yeah.
Like for me to address the problems of your community in the US, that's not right, because I don't know. I'm not from your, as they say in London, your ends, right? I'm not from your ends, and you're not from my ends. So I can't relate. And I feel like that's one thing I take away. Like Imam Malik, he didn't have all the answers for those people from Spain, because he hasn't been to Spain, or he hasn't traveled there, and he doesn't have that experience that he would have had in Medina, in Hijaz. Which I think, again, another thing with social media, it's made the world a very small place where we feel like we can solve everybody's problems.
Yeah, very good, Sheikh. Like perfectly said. There's actually in the beginning of one of the books on the adab of iftah, of like giving legal verdict, it mentions actually your residence as being kind of like a limiting or potentially a factor that you have to take into consideration, right? What is the ada of the people there, and what are you? And subhanAllah, I never thought of that. Actually, I never thought that maybe sure, does 5 daily prayers change based on the world? No. Does fasting Ramadan, does zakat, does hajj? These things there's universals, right? The deep universals. And is it possible that a person from Malaysia could give a lecture that could impact a person from Denmark? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But when it comes to very specific moments, it's, I would argue, Sheikh, that it's not even necessarily even regionally. I even tell people here in Texas, they're like, oh, this is my issue. I'm like, look, do you have an imam that like knows your family situation better?
Yeah.
And they're like, yes. I'm like, please go talk to that imam, because I'm going to give you the most conservative, cautious answer, but there may actually be different, concessions that would be available to you if I knew more about your family and things like that, right? And right now, I just don't have the wherewithal to like spend a few hours hearing your whole story. So, when people ask questions and things like that, you have to make sure as well, the person that I'm asking, like, do they know my reality, right? And if they don't know my reality, then I'm gonna probably end up getting the most, what's the word? The most like vanilla answer. It's not going to be full of concessions and it's just going to be very straight, right? Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of value to that. And the internet is the illusion of, oh, we're all connected, so he knows or she knows exactly what I'm going through. It's like, no, actually, I don't.
Yeah. There's a brother, actually, he's stated this publicly on our podcast in the past, so he wouldn't mind me re-sharing this, right? It's just since we're on the topic, where he's from the US, right? And he came once for his first ever tour in the UK. And during the talk, he basically said something like, yeah, so you guys are carrying your guns in your pockets or whatever, right? And there were kids in the audience, and they were like shocked. And he saw that reaction, like the uncles and the kids, they were like, guns? What are you talking about? And then he was like, what, you guys don't have guns in the
Yeah.
UK? And they were like, no, we don't. And I was actually in that gathering. That's what was funny. That's when we first met. And he was like, wow, okay, because I'm from a place where it's normal to have guns, and you guys, like, you clearly don't have that, right?
Yeah.
And his reflection was like, that's when it dawned on me, like, I should do my research essentially before I start going to like other places. Like, I should know my audience really well.
Yeah.
And no, this all relates back to social media, because uh, I record a video and someone else is watching it in the US, for example, and I don't know, like, it may be a good thing, it may also be a bad thing, it may be a complete disconnect, and people just, that this is where a lot of disagreements stem from, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is also why, like, when some people ask, like, can we film this or can we record this? You might actually see some scholars say no, because they know that if this is, it's not that they're afraid, but they know that if this is recorded and if it's propagated, that maybe somebody hearing it in a situation where it's not to their best interest.
Yeah.
No, it's not to their best interest. Like, I don't want, I don't want a person who's in a very dire situation to hear my lecture about how, when you're in a dire situation, that's like that you have to be patient in this. If that person's being abused, or if they're being, no, they need to seek help for their specific situation, right? The general rule is, be patient, persevere. But if a person's being hit or abused or this and this, no, you need to seek help, right? You need to seek assistance to get out of that situation. So sometimes, there's the rule and the exception to the rule. We don't make exceptions into the rule, but they both exist for a reason. And so region and area and all of that's very important to take into account. And the internet does not shorten those distances. It does not erase them. We can communicate, but it doesn't give us knowledge that we don't have otherwise.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think, there's so much more that we can talk about. I feel like we can probably do a part 2 just on like social media. Genuinely, like we can. Unfortunately, time does not permit us to, continue and go into further depth. But no, I feel like we have touched on some important points for both ourselves and everyone else listening, inshallah, to reflect on. And yeah, like I said, I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's going to be any time soon where you'll be in the UK or I'll be in the US, right? With things, the way things are going. But Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, just learning from you and hearing from you. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it and bless you and your family. I was expecting at some point for your kids to like just roll in and be like, yo, what's going on? We're on your feed. Yeah.
I actually texted my wife and I was like, hey, because she's at my in-laws. I'm like, hey, bring the kids home. It's fine. Like, it's chill. Don't worry about it. So I was like, be waiting for one of them just to like bust through that door.
Literally. No, but no, honestly, thank you so much for joining us, and may Allah bless you. And thank you to all our viewers and listeners for joining us once again for another podcast episode. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you benefited, inshallah. And yeah, from myself, Shabir, from Sheikh AbdelRahman, that's all we have time for on this episode. Keep an eye out for future ones coming your way, inshallah. And until then, we'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.